you guys today. What's the weather like?
Yeah, it's cooling down as well. I got my long sleeves on as well. It's a little chilly, but we're enjoying it over here in the Atlanta area or greater Atlanta area, as we say.
Very great. Yes, it's pumpkin pie season and has been so for a while, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to have a conversation about yeah, maximizing economic, social, and spiritual yeah, all those things together. And we have Mark Beebe with us today. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, excellent. So tell us a little bit about your background. So how did you get to the place? So right now you're working with Enterprise, fill in the blank,
Stewardship, enterprise stewardship.
stewardship.
Yep.
Yeah,
Halfway
blank.
there.
I said fill in the blank because I literally blanked out the first second. So how did you're with them now, but how did you get started on your journey towards what we'll figure out more what enterprise stewardship is all about, but I want to know a little bit about you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a Christian home, Christian education, K through 12, all the way through undergrad, actually. And but then I started working in a career of started corporate recruiting and started transitioning to more of training, delivery, and design. And pretty early on, I started asking questions about what is the purpose of all of this? I'm in my mid 20s. Is this really what I'm going to do for the next 40 years? I didn't even dislike my job, but I would go just kind of thinking, why? Is this really going to be what life is all about? And so started to have some mentors early on start to point out the bigger purpose of work and life. And it was interesting because even in a Christian environment, all the way through education, I still did not quite understand that my Christian identity informed all that I did, including work. And so there was this pretty big bifurcation of I go to church, I'm this person, I go to work, and I'm the work version of myself, and I'm there to work and to do a good job. But my identity didn't truly inform the way I went about work or who I was at work or how I treated people at work. And I wasn't evil there. It was disconnected. And so started exploring kind of overall purpose. And if you fast forward several years, I ended up getting involved with an organization called C12, which is the nation's largest, fastest growing Christian peer advisory group for CEOs and business owners. And that's where I really felt like I got a master class in what it means to integrate work and faith and family work and faith and all these different buckets in my life that I had previously separated out. Um, and so wrestled with these concepts, learned a lot through the content there, the people there, and really started to ignite more of a passion of what does it mean to truly use the platform of business to connect to your purpose and to impact people all around you, including employees, including vendors, contractors, clients, customers, the community that in which you work in. Um, and so was there for just under 7 years. In the last couple of years, I joined to be the chief operating officer with Enterprise Stewardship, which has a similar focus, working with mostly privately held for-profit Christian businesses who are really trying to figure out how do you systematize this approach of connecting your purpose and your faith to business? How do you actually operationalize it in a way that makes sense, in a way that gets a leadership team involved in that, and mostly in a way that produces not just economic results, but social and spiritual impact or capital, as we like to refer to it as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept because you're not the only person that's had this, reality in their life where like, oh yeah, there's church and there's like what I do with my family and things of that nature. We love God, but then somehow there's a disconnect with the business world or what they do for a profession. What you've seen, what do you pinpoint as like, why is there this, use that big, 50-cent word bifurcation? I'm going to use it again. And
Yeah.
What's kind of the cause of that? Do you think that you've seen, others besides yourself that had that same mindset?
Um, I don't know fully what the cause of it is, but I think culturally we think of our faith with ministry primarily. And so we grow up and we think, okay, if I'm going to be all about my faith, then I have two options. Number one is I go in full-time vocational ministry, or number two, I go to work and then I use my faith in volunteer ministry through the church to lead a small group or to lead a missions trip or whatever. And so we're still going back to this idea of ministry always happens through the church. And I absolutely believe that ministry happens through the local church, and that should be a great, healthy place to do ministry. Um, but the workplace is an unbelievable opportunity to use as a platform for ministry. And so I think we fall into a couple different traps. I know I've been in both of them. I mean, I just mentioned the first trap I was in of feeling like I had to leave my faith at the door to go to work. The second trap that we kind of swing the pendulum way over to the other side of the ditch at times is we think our platform or our business is our purpose. And so then our business becomes an idol itself, or we confuse it and we think I exist in order to run this business, which is another wonky thinking, in my view anyway. And rather to say, I have a unique purpose. We all have a universal purpose, I would say. We exist to honor God or glorify God. And so if we understand that, how do we connect it to our platform? How do we let that drive the platform? But the reality is, whether I'm running a business, I'm an entrepreneur starting a business, I'm an individual contributor within a business, our purpose should still be driving how we go about that work. And so I think those are the two ditches that we fall into. And for whatever reason, just growing up, I think we like to just continue to say faith-driven work is vocational ministry work. And so luckily, I think that barrier is being shattered more and more, and there's a much better common understanding among the faith-driven business community that it doesn't have to be that way.
Excellent. Yeah. One of our partners and friends that we've been working with the last couple months is one of the people that really saw and was a part of the movement that kind of he pinpointed started in the late 90s, this revival of understanding, just what you've been explaining, Os Hillman,
Yeah.
and what he's been doing for a long time. And people have been waking up to the fact that there's stuff to do in the workplace or wherever you happen to be called, and you have an influence for the kingdom of God in doing that. So enterprise stewardship, we hear that word stewardship. You think of the guys with the talents. That's one of the things that first comes into
Yep.
my mind. Explain a little bit of the stewardship mindset and what you guys are helping people do with that.
Yeah, I think the talents is a common parable that we think of when we think about stewardship. I think the other concept a lot of us think about is just money. How do we steward money, which is certainly a part of it. But when we talk about stewardship, we're talking about three forms of capital. We're talking about economic capital, social capital, and spiritual capital. And we use that word capital very intentionally. Capital, by definition, is excess wealth that we have that we're willing to put at risk to get a return, right? So when we think about capital, yes, as a business, we should be making money. But we need to start asking questions about whether it's personally or for the business, how much is enough? And then when we can answer that question, we understand how do we then reinvest the financial income or the financial profitability back into people, back into the business, back into charities, et cetera. But it's excess that we get to put back at risk to do good work. When it comes to social capital, when we gather or when we without excess, or if we don't ask the question, how much is enough? And a lot of us like to gather good friends or good relationships. But when we think about putting relationships at risk, it's how do we go above and beyond just our primary circle to invest in others, to spend time with others, to love on others, right? If you remember the old Discover MasterCard commercials, it was, hey, you go to a baseball game, A ticket to the game costs X.
Mhm.
You buy concessions, it costs X. Taking your son to his first Major League Baseball game, priceless,
Mhm.
right? So the social capital is kind of the priceless components. But in order to have the capital, you actually have to take some risks with people. You have to invest in them maybe above and beyond what we naturally have. And then on the spiritual side, same thing. It's one thing to know Jesus, K-N-O-W. I know Jesus. This is good. But when we talk about spiritual capital, for us to put that at risk, we actually have to share Jesus. And so to tie that back to the parable of the talents, right? The master returned and he was only upset with one servant. And it was the one servant who wasn't willing to put the wealth at risk. And I think a lot of us, we look at that and we say, "Oh man, I can't believe he didn't go work the coin or the talent that he had." But if we look at our own lives, if we look at our social capital, our spiritual capital, and our personal economic capital, I think a lot of us sit on those three forms of capital a lot more than we like to admit. And we don't risk to invest in others, or we don't risk to share the gospel with others. And maybe we don't even risk our finances to share with others at times. And so those are the three forms that we look at, and it's really about, okay, how do we go above and beyond? How do we be a generous culture as a workplace? How do we be generous leaders? And for us, the big thing, we all want to transform business. We want a flourishing business that is truly producing those capitals, but it starts with people. And if we don't have transformed leaders, we're not going to have a transformed business. If you're not flourishing individually as a leader, as an owner, an entrepreneur, then you're probably not going to outpace the flourishing of your business as well. And so we hold both of these things as we're very business focused, but we also continue to go back to the leader. Are they flourishing? Are they putting things at risk? Are they willing to maximize the capital that they've been given as well?
I love it.
Mm.
Dr. J, you've been pinged.
Yeah, man, Mark, that's so good. And so when you talk about this having excess wealth that you're willing to put at risk, could you speak a little bit to there has to be some type of measurement. I think a lot of individuals, they don't even know where they are. They're not consciously aware of even these concepts. I know a lot of people just think, oh, I don't have enough. I don't have enough,
Mhm.
whatever, of my economic situation is not such that I can do X, Y, and Z. Or they don't even, as far as social capital, man, I don't want to do this, right? Because I may lose this friendship. What if I try to help this person and it doesn't work out? So can you speak a little bit more to that? Like, how do we even know where are we at to know if we have excess or not?
Yeah, great question. I would say two things to that. Number one is the idea that we might not have enough, right? And so when we hear things like this, we want to go to the far end of the spectrum and we just want to risk everything, right? We're like, I'm inspired. I'm not risking enough. And I would say, hey, at times you might be in a gathering mode. Are you able to support your family? Are you getting a good living wage? Are you able to take care of your inner circle before trying to go do all these great things and putting things at risk that would jeopardize the things you're mostly responsible for at home, right? So there is that concept of um, you got to go through this journey, I think, economically, socially, and spiritually. It says, do I have enough? But to do that, you have to be able to answer the question, and it's best to do this before you're in the middle of it, of how much is enough. And this is where we get into the concept of ownership versus stewardship, right? If I start a business, I like to call myself the owner. I started it, I own it. Look at the LLC paperwork; it's my name on it, right? And so it's harder to say how much is enough when I feel like I am the true owner of this. But if we look at the concept of stewardship, it says, okay, God actually not only owns the business, he owns everything. And so now I don't own it, but I'm paid to manage the asset that God has given me to steward or to manage. So then the key question becomes not how much do I get to keep, but what is the appropriate number uh, that is worth me managing this asset that God's given me, right? And so if we can work together and wrestle through those questions, and that's not easy to answer. Like that's not I spent 10 minutes on it, and I think this is the number that it is. But if we're willing to wrestle with that from that perspective of God owns it, I get to steward it, then we can start to see the delta of I think this is a reasonable wage for me to steward or manage the asset God's given me. And so as the business grows, our wage doesn't have to keep growing. What we get to do is we get to increase the capital or increase the delta in between what's a responsible stewardship wage and what the actual value of the business is. And then there's tons of capital that we get to play with. But if we don't wrestle with that question early, then wealth is pretty insidious, right? Like we love stuff, we love to gather. And a lot of times it's either out of fear or out of greed that drives our desire for more and more and more. But if you don't wrestle with the question, then ultimately it's probably never going to be enough, right? I'm going to keep taking, and it's going to be really hard to start putting some of that at risk for other communities or other employees or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's great. Makes me think of the widow's mite on one level too, because I think the other thing you have to think about as well is, in some people's eyes, you'll never have enough to get started. As far, like, oh, well, I got this other thing going on, and there's always something else to pay for, or there's always, like I got to take care of what's in front of me. And of course, Jesus really commended that the widow for at that point. Apparently, that was all she had. And I think there are moments that God may ask for all you have in one form or another, maybe not financially, but uh, yeah, there's that end of the spectrum too, right? Where people have that fear based. There's the greed thing. There's like never enough, and then there's the fear based never enough.
Yeah. Is it all right if I share my screen real quick and just
Yeah,
show
yeah.
a
Let me make
quick
sure I can
framework?
get you doing that. Let me just
It looks like I have access here.
yeah yeah yeah, go for it.
Um,
Perfect.
So we like to use this grid as a way to kind of show this continuum, right? So on the left-hand side, you have your economic, social, spiritual capital. And then across the top, we have our three states of being. You have your poverty, wealth, and flourishing. You could substitute wealth for ownership and flourishing for stewardship here, right? But it's just this idea that, we all go through times, a lot of us, especially as we're younger, where we don't feel like we have any money, right? Everyone's got their living on ramen stories or whatever, whether it's college or maybe just a difficult time. But before, and I will say, um, the Bible is clear around tithing and first fruits and whatnot. So what we'd be talking about is not that. We'd be talking about above and beyond, right? And so when you have first enough, then we give above and beyond that, and that could be in a variety of ways. It could be through the business. It could be again to charitable giving, the church, etc. Um, and then you have your social. So I'm impoverished if I have no friends socially, right? Um, Wealthy would be I have friends. This is great. When we flourish, we give our time above and beyond just our friends. And then spiritually, we go from I have no Jesus to I know Jesus to now I'm actually sharing my faith. And all of these things take risk to do it. This wealth, when we find ourselves driven out of fear or greed, we're probably working out our thoughts, our theology, our practice right here in the wealth column of am I really willing to put things at risk? But we also know there are times where sometimes we're just in poverty. The people around us are in poverty. And the Bible does tell us there's always going to be poor among us. Um, so what happens is when we work with organizations in particular, people get very excited about connecting their faith to their business, and then they want to skip down here to this box of I'm going to take a bunch of risks to share their faith. Okay, that's awesome. But there's a natural progression here that if we start economically, if we give them a really good wage first, do they have benefits? Are they able to take care of their family for a good job that we're able to give them? Are we then able to invest in them, give them our time, love on them, give them the priceless stuff, then it makes sharing our faith a lot easier. And so, even as we think about the order of which we would help other people flourish, I think there's a natural progression of start economically, then socially, then spiritually. And that doesn't mean it will always flow that way. But we do get ourselves in trouble a little bit when we say, I'm going to have enough money. I'm going to live in the wealthy phase economically, but stewardship wise, I'm going to take a lot of risk sharing my faith. That drives a disconnect with the people that we serve or the employees that we give a job to of saying, hey, I love that you share your faith, but I'd also like a little bit more money because I'm having a hard time surviving on the wage that we have. And so I think this is just a helpful grid for us to consider as well. And almost as an order of operations as we look at how do we invest the forms of capital with one another.
Yeah, I love all that. I reminds me of how Jesus ministered, right? Like he was always meeting the needs of the people as he went out with feeding the 5,000, healing the sick, raising the dead. If we go out in the workplace and raise the dead, people are going to listen to your story about Jesus. That's guaranteed. So yeah, and that's sometimes when you think about that, the end result, it comes before like the process. Jesus was super relational. People loved him. They followed him all over the place. So I think that's a great model that you guys have out there, essentially following the Bible, which is always good.
Yep.
So high impact business, I see that in you got that on the side there. And I guess that's one of your resources
Yeah.
for enterprise stewardship. So I'm assuming it kind of takes all these elements. Can you kind of define high impact business and what that really means from your guys' perspective?
Absolutely. So the work we do is, again, we work with other organizations and try to help provide a roadmap to the end result of flourishing. And again, for us, flourishing would be economic, social, and spiritual impact, spiritual capital. So to do that, the big question is always how. That's great. We'd all love to. Let me sign up for the end result, but how do you actually get there? So we have a business operating system that we work through that's very principle based, but then drives through various practices that with predictable performance results. Okay, so for us, there's four primary disciplines of business that we look at. The first is purpose. And the key question of the purpose discipline is why do we exist? So just as we were talking individually, how do we connect our purpose to our platform of business? Every business has a purpose as well. And so how do we come alongside business leaders and help identify both the broad purpose of, yes, your business does exist to honor God, but then what's your unique expression of of your business purpose? And so how do we create that? Um, the second primary discipline is one of strategy. And the key question we're asking there is who do we serve? So, why do we exist? Strategy, who do we serve? Then, operationally, discipline number three is asking the key question, how do we serve? Okay, so why do we exist? Who do we serve? How do we serve? And then that last discipline is one we call execution with the key question of what is our impact? And that's where we start looking at are we impacting economically, socially, and spiritually? And so if those are the key questions, we really start answering them with four key principles that drive the rest of the practices of what we do. And so the key principle under purpose would be to honor God. That's the starting place. Key principle for strategy of who do we serve. The principle there would be we serve people. How do we serve? Key principle is we pursue excellence in everything that we do. And then lastly, within execution, we steward our capital. It would be the key principle. And so we look at four disciplines with four key principles that then begin to drive a system of practices that look at everything that we do within the business. So we get pretty granular all the way through the operations of the business, looking at what we would call critical success factors, everything from your culture aspect of what we would say your navigation or leadership, how you drive customers with marketing and sales, how you develop product, and then how you manage your cash. Really looking at how do we take very practical business application that's principally driven, that's meant to get you economic, social, and spiritual results.
And I think you have like an actual working model that your founder started that really kind of propelled you into what you're doing, right? You told me a little bit about this story of the business inside of a prison, right?
That's right. So, roughly 20 years ago now, our founder, Pete Oakes, he was running another business that he has since transitioned to his son. It's called Capital Three. It's a holding company that has a couple other businesses. One is called Seat King, one's another called Electrics. And they primarily work on zero-turn lawnmowers, some other farm equipment, tractors, etc. One business really manufactures lawnmower seats for zero-turn lawnmowers. So they have about 70% of that market today. And then the other builds electrical wiring harnesses. Um, and so early on, purchased one of the businesses. It was growing rather quickly, but it was in a part of Kansas that had not a ton of labor available. And so someone gave him the idea you should look into inmate work release program. There's a maximum security, medium security, and minimum security state prisons right in the area. And so he looked into it and they started going through that process. And so it worked for a while. They would bring inmates over to the business, they would work, they would take them back, and that was going well. But eventually, the labor needs weren't able to meet the demand. And so it wasn't going to be the solution moving forward. But the warden came over to him and said, well, here's the deal. We can't do this anymore, but we do have extra facility space behind the walls of the prison that if you're willing to move your manufacturing floor inside the prison walls, then you can have all the labor that you want. And so within about 60 days, they were operating inside a maximum security prison, building wire harnesses. And so um, now we look at it, right? You can look at it and we will take business groups through and different owners and kind of a case study and cast some vision for what businesses administering and connecting purpose and platform can look like. Originally, it was tough sledding, right? I mean, it was really a labor shortage issue.
Mm.
But before long, you started to realize, hey, these guys have done some bad stuff. But the biggest difference between them and between us is they got caught at their worst moment, and
Mm.
we haven't, right? And you really started to see them as people. And once you saw them as people, things started to change. It was no longer a labor shortage issue, but it was a stewardship opportunity to say we are sitting here in a very unique context with the ability to have unique impact. And so go back to our purpose discipline. We talk about three practices in the purpose discipline: creating your purpose statement, defining your principles of the organization, and then making a series of promises. So one of those promises is to the employees. And so they had a company meeting, and Pete stood up in front of the employees, including the inmates, and said, "Hey, I have a vision for us. We're going to have the best prison in the United States of America." And of course, they laughed and they kind of, there's no way. That's an oxymoron. You can't have the best prison. There are no good prisons. It's prison, right? Makes sense. And he said, well, here's my promise to you. Okay, so this is where the promise kicks in. I will do everything I can to make you the best men that you can be, right? So this is the social capital. This is really tying it back to the social impact and the social commitment. And at first, I don't, they didn't quite believe him, but they started putting their money where their mouth was, and they started investing in people. They started building programs and helping them with fathering classes, with other resources that would help them just become better people. And there was one inmate in particular. He was the early adopter that they needed, and he started to catch the vision and believe Pete when he said, "We will invest in you."
Mm.
And so he ended up writing a long document or manifesto about how to be the best inmate in America. And so he started really buying in and seeing it, and he's like, "Wow, they're for real. I'm going to be for real." Anyway, long story short, he was never supposed to get out. He was supposed to be in for life. And he, through great behavior and transformation, he ends up getting out. He was a really awesome artist, and so he ends up starting a tattoo parlor right down the road from the prison that's still there today. He's running it, and he primarily does cover-ups and works with people who are formerly either in prison or coming out of a gang lifestyle in redeeming their art while he talks about being redeemed by Jesus, right? And so when you look at it, I mean, that's a long journey. That doesn't happen overnight. But
No.
it started with here's our context, here's our purpose, here's a promise we're going to make. And when you stick with it, they go through this process and you start to see the social and spiritual impact that comes down the road with that. And of course, along the line, they had to make money. And so that came with figuring out how to run a really good business, how to invest in people on how to make a great product and have good strategy and good operations. And so they did all that, but it allows them to maximize the platform socially and spiritually.
To me, that's a little parable right there. Putting your business in the prison and bringing God into it. That's essentially what we're all called to do. The world is out there; they're chained and lost in sin and all that, and we all have the opportunity as business people to start these organizations and follow the type of principles you're talking about, and do that very same thing. So I think there's a really cool parallel
Yeah,
that worked
and
out.
real quick, Mark, it's interesting. A lot of people will hear the story or they'll visit the prison, they'll experience kind of the transformation of what it is today. And I always get a little sad when people walk away and I hear comments like, well, we could never do that.
Mm,
Well, our business isn't suited to be inside a prison, or we don't have that opportunity, or whatever. And I just go back to that was never the intent. The intent was we have a business issue and we got to survive. And so let's go fix the business issue. But over time, what they started to recognize was the uniqueness of the context that they were placed. Right. So most businesses are not going to move their plant inside a prison. And I'd probably argue most shouldn't, right? Most aren't equipped to do it. But everyone has a unique context that they operate out of. And so, okay, it's not inmates. What is it? Who are your people? What are the needs of your people? What are the promises that you can give your people? What's the vision you can cast for your people? Um, it has much more to do with just kind of understanding where you uniquely sit in the marketplace, in the area of the country that you're in the city that you're in, and then going from there versus trying to replicate a model that someone else has done. Because, we don't need copycats. We need people to understand, okay, where am I? God, you've given me this gift of a platform of business. Now, what do I do about it? How do I meet the needs of the people that I am here to steward right now? And that could be a thousand different ways to do that, but that's the key question.
yeah, yeah. Dr. J, you have another insider question?
Yeah, comment question. I absolutely love it, Mark. You uh, unknowingly segued into my question that I was going to ask, because in this process, right, there are certain mindsets that individuals have that you work with. So, have you found through the organization that you've worked with this uncovering or this unveiling or this aha moment that there are potentially new opportunities that could be addressed or that have been found through just working with individuals? Because you spoke earlier, and it is kind of sad when individuals look at something like that and say, oh, we can never do that. But have you found the opposite to have occurred with the people that you've worked with, that they've said, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. These are, opportunities that we had not even thought about before.
Yeah, um, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. One, I would just say I think people would be surprised at how many small businesses, medium-sized businesses, even large businesses around the country are doing things every single day that most of us will never hear about that impact the lives of the people around them. I mean, it's incredible, the creativity that people come up with. And it takes time. If you're new to it, it's a pretty narrow lens that we look at it through at first, typically. But the more you practice it and the more you say, okay, this month or this year or this quarter, whatever time frame it is, what are the needs of our employees? How do we invest in them? It's a muscle that you continue to get stronger at and you build up over time. And so the creativity that can come out is just incredible. I'd say for us in particular, is we're working with leadership teams. A lot of the companies that we work with, we're brought in because the owner or the CEO is a strong believer and they're trying to drive some of the things that we're talking about through their culture and through their operations. But a lot of times the leadership team is not fully there yet. Some of them are, some of them are probably more what we just call faith friendly, maybe culturally good with it, but like not personally there. And so that's where we hold again both the organization and the people transformation at the same time, because we want to go so fast to business transformation. I mean, we get so excited. We just want to start doing all these things and we want to celebrate economic, social, spiritual capital. But again, you're not going to get there without transformed people. And so sometimes what we do is we encourage people just to start wrestling as a leadership team. How, how do we personally figure out our purpose and our passion around serving people, pursuing excellence, and stewarding capital? Do we do that individually? Do we want to do that? And when we can go there and have those conversations, we just got done with a couple different client engagements. And whenever we do that, we try to have a debrief meeting and just work through, okay, how did things go? Did we execute the things that we wanted to? And both of them said, yeah, hey, we had some business wins. Like we gained here, we got more efficient here, revenue's up, et cetera, whatever it might be. They said, but the number of spiritual conversations I'm having within our leadership meetings, or the number of questions that people are coming to me with about my faith, is more than we've ever experienced. And it's like that's the key, right? If you start having those conversations within the business, the creativity will come over time and people will get more passionate about it. And there's a thousand different ways to build ministry teams or care teams or build your plan around social capital or your plan around spiritual activities. But at the end of the day, if it starts with that leadership room, and if they're really living it out, then it becomes contagious and something that you would expect to see all those results that we're talking about.
I think a lot of times we see the problems that come up and we see that as an obstacle. But as you described earlier with the whole thing with the business in the prison, it actually was a great opportunity, right? And a lot of business folks, we're all going to come into difficult situations. And that's a lot of times you'll hear people talk about like business is about solving someone's problem, right? But
Mhm.
at the same time, God's presenting us problems that we're meant to solve, not just an individual, you know, consumer or another business, that sort of thing. And so that's the opportunity, right? Where we or being brought before something, it doesn't look right. And we may not look at or be able to see the end product, just like I'm this whole prison business. Like you started out, or Peter started out with what he like, oh, we just got to figure out how to get this so it works better. But in the meantime, God sees the end result, like it's going to be an amazing operation. It's going to affect a lot of people. We're going to see just great fruit from it. And it reminds me of this thing that I repeat a lot. You can say a lot within Sheep Feast is like, man has the plans, but God's going to direct the path. So even though you might have an amazing plan that sounds good, there's probably going to be a lot of redirects along the way. And is that something you guys see when you're working with people as well?
Yeah, there's redirects and there's obstacles and quite frankly there's pain and hard decisions along the way too. You're running a business still, so you don't have endless amounts of money and customers don't just flock to you to buy whatever you want to sell, right? It's a real business. Especially, again, we work with for-profit, privately held businesses. And so I think what can be really hard, the more public you are with your people in your community about why you exist and your purpose, um, the expectations that can come with that from people who work for you or the people in your community. And a lot of times those are expectations that aren't given to them. They're expectations that they come up with and apply to you. So for example, you start talking about what does it look like to honor God with your people? What does it look like to serve your employees? Well, I think every one who's run a business before has said sometimes the best way I can serve this employee is to let them go, as an example. They're not a right fit. They would be better suited elsewhere. Well, to an employee where you've been preaching, hey, this is why we exist and we're here to serve you, and my promise is to make you the best person I can make you, and
Mm.
that can feel like a pretty big disconnect, or that can feel like, hey, we were doing something noble and now there's a body in your wake. And how do you wrestle with some of those things? So I think it's easy to just kind of put this on the screen and we got great frameworks and we can say this is what you do. But the reality is business is still really hard, and leading people is hard, and people are messy, and um so yeah, there's a lot of that, but it's the consistent discipline process of saying how do we continue to get closer to center with doing everything with excellence and doing everything driving out of our purpose. um we usually don't get it right the first time, right? Even within our system, within our tool set, every quarter we go back to our core set of tools and we review them. And we say, is this still right? Does this still represent who we're called to be right now, who we want to be? Is it working? Do we need to adjust things? And it's this constant cycle. And so it's not hey, we're going to offer a workshop, and then by the end you're inspired and you just go do it. It's a team that comes together and says, okay, are we truly committed to living out our principles in a way that informs our practices, that gets the type of results? And it's hard to do. And so it really comes down to the commitment and the discipline. Are we going to stay consistent, keep circling in, let's find the target? And once you consistently start hitting the target, things fall into place really well. But it's not a quick win usually. We can help people get quick wins in various, we can work on cash flow and get some quick wins. We can get operational efficiencies. We can work on your marketing and get better wins there, et cetera. But when you're really talking about how we say flourishing with the economic, social, spiritual outcomes, that's a long game. And so if you're willing to stay committed to it, and stay consistent with the effort, it's helpful. But you're going to have road bumps, for sure, and a lot of it's going to be with the people that you're trying to serve.
Definitely. Want to let people know that are here with us live on Zoom that if you have a question, drop in the chat. We'll pose it to the other Mark in the Zoom today. Uh, Made me also think of to make it even more spiritual. The Bible talks about working out your salvation, and it's just not like a one-time thing, right? You raise your hand, you say, I want to be follow Jesus and fix it and forget it. Same thing with the business, right? You're talking about doing this whole circling in and coming back quarterly and checking things. That's a great mindset to have, like, because you're continually working it out. You're making sure that you're on track, and that's how you get these adjustments. Like, especially if you're bringing in not only the group and the business leaders, but introducing God's wisdom to it, right? Like, wait a minute, is this still valid for what we're doing and for who we're trying to serve? So I love that. Dr. J, discipleship is key. Like you talk about this discipline of the business, that is the heart of discipleship, is that
Yeah.
you're finding these disciplines and implementing into your life to make in your business to make it work the way that God intended. Yes, yes. So if, like I said, any other questions, you can drop them here. I know I wanted to share your website as well.
Mhm.
So let's pop that up here on the screen so people can check that out. And as Share screen. All right, so walk us through a little bit on this site. Where would you want people to kind of check things out first when they come to enterprisestewardship.com?
Yeah, there's a handful of things you could look at here. We have a number of resources, a great overview of how we view business and the purpose of business. You can see in that first gold button on that homepage, watch the purpose of business is a great little video you can watch from our founder. And then the other thing that I would encourage people to do is it's hard to know where you need to go without knowing where you're currently at. And so we do offer an assessment for leadership teams to take. That it's really walks you through how are we operating within each of those disciplines: purpose, strategy, operations, and execution, and what kind of results are we getting. And if folks are interested in doing that, I usually have a quick conversation with them to make sure they'd be a good fit for it. But would love to offer that to anyone, and that would come with a free coaching call on the other side of it, just to help debrief those results, understand where they're at, we think they could go, and then we kind of go from there to see if we'd be able to help them more beyond that. The other piece, if you go you can certainly learn more about us there, but go to that events and resources in the enterprise playbook, the fourth one down here.
Yeah.
You can sign up for we put new articles out every other week with emails that really kind of goes into more detail, trying to give more information away and really equip people if they want to follow along, track our content, etc., to sign up for that. And you'll get plenty of goodies in your inbox over the several weeks and months ahead. And that'd be a great place to get some more good content from us.
It works. You do have to confirm your email, which I'm doing right now. So excellent. Yeah, everybody go check that out, whether you're watching this live or you're seeing this on a replay. Obviously, if you've been tuning in and listening, you know there's just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that Enterprise Stewardship is offering businesses, and we're just kind of scratching the surface, obviously. Mark, as we're kind of wrapping up our time together, I did want to just say, oh, here's a question
Yep.
well, first comment, Jonathan says, this is really insightful and thank you. So, yes, we echo that gratitude. And then Luke is saying, you talked about C12. Uh, what kind of differentiates you with what they do and what's complementary to what C12 is doing? Because
Yeah,
it's a
that's
well-done
it's
organization.
a great question. So I'm a huge fan of C12 and Christian peer advisory groups. We're very complementary to one another. So what part of what makes C12 so unique and special is they have incredible focus around what they want to do really well, and that's specifically within the peer advisory space. So they have their leaders come together on a monthly basis in groups of about 12 leaders at a time, organized by a local chair to help facilitate similar conversations about how do we connect faith and business and run great businesses, run great businesses for a greater purpose. Where what we do is we bolster on the how. So a lot of times what leaders will do is they'll leave some of those meetings and say, these are great ideas. How do I actually operationalize this? And so typically tell business owners you really should have a couple things in place. One of them is a safe place where you can talk about anything and everything about your life. And C12 is a great spot for that. The other thing you should have is you should have a business operating system that is supportive of the things that you're learning within that peer environment. And that's what we do. For example, some of the conversations around your people that you may have in a C12 meeting, you're not going to have in a coaching session with us, because if I need to get advice on Dr. J, I'm not going to do it with Dr. J on the phone with our coach. Right. So there's different parameters, different purposes for those. You're still going to learn great content in both, but one is more to really help the operationalizing of a product, and one is more peer encouragement, peer accountability around how you're living this out within your business.
Great. Thanks so much for giving us a little bit more details on that. That is And Jonathan is asking about your investment framework. What does that look like?
Is that meaning more like cost of the program or I mean,
Yeah,
typically with us, we're a pay for fee service, so we it depends on size of organization, complexity of organization, context of organization. So if you're interested at all about what that looks like, I would say reach out. Let's have a conversation about what those needs look like, how we would serve. Every client is going to look a little bit different, and be happy to have that conversation.
great, great. Awesome. Well, this has been really good, Mark. I'm so appreciative of you sharing your time with us. You have a great first name. I don't know what else I can say. Last name's pretty cool too. If you're a 90s football fan, I've asked this already. Mark is not related to the Don Beebe from the Buffalo Bills, but funny enough, you are related to Don Beebe. Is that right?
My dad's name is Don Beebe. Yep. So wrong family, but good name.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. So it looks like, you're a little bit more on the basketball world as opposed to the football,
That's
which
right.
we're all about
Yep.
that too. We like to hoop it up.
Always ready to hoop.
Excellent, excellent. Well, any kind of final thoughts before we sign off for today, Mark?
Yeah, I would bring it back. I was just reviewing this yesterday. There's a single verse in the book of Judges, chapter 3. I think it's verse 31. It's the last verse of that chapter. And it talks about a judge that most people don't know anything about. And it's the judge called Shamgar. And we like to talk about the Shamgar principle. And it basically, so you'd think I'd have it memorized. It's only one verse, but it basically says, and Shamgar, son of so and so, was a judge, and he killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. And we share that just to say, an ox goad is not a weapon. It's not meant for war. And yet God put him in this place and gave him an ox goad, and somehow he killed 600 people and saved Israel. And we say, I don't know where you're at, but God has given you all that you need to do all that he's asked you to do in this moment. And so whether it's a prison, whether it's a startup, whether it's a $2 million business, whether you're in the States, whether you're overseas, you have all that you need right now to do all that God's asking you to do. And so take the ox goad or whatever you have and take the next step in connecting your purpose to your platform.
You have yourself muted, Mark.
I was gapping away. I was making some great comments,
It
and
was awesome.
that happens sometimes. The old mute button gets you. But no, Mark, we love that thought. Whatever's in your hand, uh, take it and use it. God's going to take and multiply it. I'm sure that's the way He does it. So once again, Mark, appreciate your time and being with us. For everybody else, thanks for being with us as well. And we will catch you again next time on the Corral Call.